Raven is the quintessential of mix-ups in Tekken 8, ranging from stance mix-ups, full crouch mix-ups, and back turn mix-ups. He excels mostly at putting your opponents in very bad situations. Not only that, whilst in hit, Raven has some pretty good pressure with his clones as well as some ridiculous chip damage as well. Hey guys, GamerNemy here, and in this guide we're going to talk about Raven's most important tools, how to utilize these tools, in what scenarios you want to use these tools, and some overall tips and tricks revolving around all these particular tools. So without further ado, sit down, boot up your game, get comfortable because it's gonna be a long one. Let's get right into it. Okay, so first let's start with Raven's 1-2-4, which is a counter hit confirmable string. Now what this means is you can visually see if the first two hits land on counter hit, then finish the whole string to get everything guaranteed on counter hit. Now this move is -14 on block and leaves you in back turned. In most situations as Raven, as we'll talk about later in the video, you can do stuff like parries and power crush when you're in back turn. However, -14 you can't do anything the opponent does that's 14 frames and below as a punish will be guaranteed, so be very careful. And 1-4 is not easy to hit, counter hit confirm as compared to something like classes 1-1-1 or lows 1-1-4-1, so be very careful. You have to practice this so many times because, like I said, it is very risky at -14, especially against characters that have 14 frame launchers. Raven does have some relatively good keep out tools, and 1-4 happens to be one of his best, right? Like I said, it's 10 frames, meaning it's generally the fastest move in the game, right? Fast moves in this game come out at 10 frames, basically jabs, right? So having a jab as a counter hit confirmable tool for keep out, that is very strong. That is very strong, and Raven luckily has the luxury of having one of these tools. Now it's not a last 1-1-1, but it is something decent that he has. So just how exactly do you use this move? How do you implement this move in your game plan? Well, like I said, it's basically just used for keep out, right? And as I always say with these moves, as I said in my last guide, in my Steve guide, one jabs are very strong for keep out. So you use this move as a keep out, and they are especially strong against characters that don't have very good high crush, characters like Hwarang and Brian, for example. These jab strings or keep out strings are very good against those characters. So basically a character is in your face, right, mashing buttons in your face, not actually using frame data to their advantage. That Hwarang or that Dragunov mashing buttons in your face, boom, throw out a 1-4, but remember you have to visually see if the move lands on counter hit. The first two moves land on counter hit, then finish the whole string because -14 is too risky to just throw out willy-nilly. And what makes this move also very good is the fact that you can transition from 1-2 into Soulzone. So Soulzone is a stance we'll talk about later in the video as well, but it basically has some tools out of Soulzone. So you can do like 1-2 into Soulzone. So you basically turn defense into offense. When you start using 1-4 that much, people start respecting your jab strings, right? That gives you the opportunity to cancel the 1-2 into Soulzone. So go like 1-2 Soulzone 4. Soulzone 4, for example, is a law that goes under jab. So if you do like 1-2 and the opponent tries to jab you, you throw out a Soulzone 4, you will go right under those jabs. You can go 1-2 into Soulzone 2, which is a mid, so you kind of turn this defense into offense, all because of the 1-2 jab into Soulzone. That's kind of the mental mix-up situation you have with the string. This is what makes 1-4 very strong for keep out and mix-ups as well. 1-4 used for keep out, 1-2 into Soulzone used to turn your defense into offense when the opponent starts respecting your 1-2-4 or your 1-2 jabs. Now let's talk about Raven's down forward 1, and I don't usually cover down forward 1s in my guides, mostly because the use case for every character's down forward 1 in this game is relatively the same, but Raven is an exception. So for starters, his down forward 1 comes out at 14 frames. Most down forward 1s come out at 13 frames, so it's 1 frame slower. However, it is 1 frame more advantageous than the average down forward 1. So his down forward 1 is -2, whereas most characters down forward 1 are -3 in this game. So his down forward 1 is very strong. Like, apart from the range being the worst part about this down forward 1, Firstly, it has an extension, right? Down forward 1-4, he has a clone follow-up, which is natural on normal hit. So if the first hit lands, the second hit will land as well. However, the clone is -14, so it will get punished. Be very careful. Secondly, it acts as a homing move, right? This move tracks both sides. The exception is against characters that have pretty good side steps like Lily, Hadisa, and Zafina, but for the most part, this thing will track both sides. So it's basically Raven's go-to homing move, and a pretty strong homing move at that, because of, like I said earlier, it has the down forward 1-4 extension as well. It's just a down forward 1, and as like I said, the use case of down forward 1s in this game is pretty generic, and this counts for Raven's down forward 1 as well. It's basically just a check, right? Just studying your opponent to see their habits. What are they doing after I throw out a down forward 1? So this applies to Raven as well, and this down forward 1 also has some pretty good pushback on block, right? So it's a pretty good tool to use to create whiff opportunities. Like a down forward 1, create that space, then backdash and see what they do after. Down forward 1, you have that pushback, create the space, sidestep and see what they do after. Like, this thing is just everything. 14 frame Punisher, right? Anything else -14, you can do down forward 1-4. It's a homing move, it tracks both sides against most of the opponents in the game, and it's basically a very good check for studying your opponents. Like, you know, like down forward 1 into go low, they're respecting you. Down forward 1, a good setup to 1-4, right? Down forward 1 instead of standing 2. All these tools we'll talk about, by the way, guys, so just keep that in mind. Don't you worry, I gotcha. I also forgot to mention that down forward 1-4 is natural on hit, but does not gel on block. So meaning if you do down forward 1-4 on block, if the opponent mashes after you do down forward 1, they will get hit by the follow-up. So now the opponent has to worry about Raven actually finishing this string, right? So is he gonna finish the string? Is he gonna just check me and, you know, back away? Is he gonna check me then continue his offense? Like, it's a whole mental mix-up situation again with down forward 1, and that's what makes it a very, very strong tool in his arsenal. And now for his down back 2, which is basically just another down forward 1 version, except this one will lead you into Raven's back turn stance. So just a brief explanation on Raven's back turn. His back turn is a stance, meaning he has moves that are completely separate or different from the moves that he has whilst he's facing the opponent. If you go into back turn, you either have to manually cancel to get out of back turn, or do certain moves from back turn that will take you out of the stance. If you go into back turn and don't do any of these things, you are going to stay in back turn. This is what most new Raven players should understand. Once you go into back turn, you will stay in that stance unless you cancel out of it or do moves that take you out of back turn. So back turn is a stance, right? Keep that in mind. This will get you killed if you don't know what you're doing, right? You have to know how Raven's back turn stance works. Okay, so his down back 2 takes Raven into back turn, right? That's what differentiates this down back 2 from a generic down forward 1. However, it has the properties of a down forward 1. Comes out at 13 frames and -4 on block. However, most down forward 1s are -3, but just 1 frame difference doesn't really change that much, but it leaves you back turn, which basically makes it different from the generic down forward 1. So now this down back 2 is like a rock, paper, scissors of mix-ups on block. You force yourself to go into mix-up situations if you want to. So you can cancel down back 2 and just cancel it by pressing back 3+4 to come out of back turn stance, and this is completely safe on block. You don't have to commit to going to a mix-up after doing down back 2. So down back 2, cancel immediately with back 3+4 and you will stay safe. It's as good as throwing out a normal down forward 1. So keep that in mind. You're not forced to go for a mix-up after down back 2. But if you go into down back 2 on block, right, you can force some mix-ups if you want. Like I said, it's a rock, paper, scissors situation. If you have the right reads, the rock, paper, scissors will be in your favor. If you don't have the right reads, this will be in the opponent's favor and you might get launched, you might get countered, you might get floated. Like this, like down back 2 on its own deserves like a tutorial on its own. Like there's so many mind games you can do off of this. Just to give you guys a wide picture of what I'm trying to say. For example, right, you do down back 2 with Raven, you go into back turn. If your opponent jabs jabs, right? You can like cancel by pressing down back. So what happens is Raven does this like crouch animation where he like dashes back, right? So if you do that, it takes you into Raven's crouching state, and you can actually punish your opponent for throwing out jabs. So you know, like down back 2, then hold down back into an instant while standing 1 punish, which can go right under the jabs and launch your opponent. You can do down back 2 into like a dick jab, so down back 2 into down 1, or down back 2 into down 4. All these options will beat the opponent's jabs if they try to jab, right? So that's one aspect of the mix-up that goes around with down back 2. Now if you do down back 2 and the opponent does a down forward 1 instead, or like a mid check, right, the jabs will beat that down forward 1. So Raven from back turn has a back turn jab, which is an 8-frame jab, right? So back turn 1. So if you do down back 2 into back turn 1, this will beat any opponent mids that they throw out, or a mid check. So let's say you do down back 2, the opponent does a down forward 1. If you do down back 2 into back turn 1, you will beat the down forward 1 option. So again, like I said, rock, paper, scissors. It all depends on the reads they're making after down back 2 on block. If the opponent is going low after down back 2, so let's say you do down back 2 and the opponent goes for like a down 1 or a down 4 or like a dick jab, you can do back turn 4, which is a safe mid hit engager, right? Safe on block, and goes over lows, it goes over dick jabs as well. So like I said, rock, paper, scissors, depending on the reads that you make, but you don't have to commit. Like I said, you can cancel, just go back into back turn to stay safe. Now where this down back 2 is very strong is on hit. On hit, you are guaranteed mix-ups from this, and that's why it's so good with Raven, because he does have a very strong low from back turn. He has back turn forward for 1. So this is basically like the essential mix-up for this stance, and this is why opponents will be trying to duck you when you are in the stance. It's because of this particular low. But like I said, he has some strong mids, right? Back turn 4, he has back turn forward 3, back turn forward to 3. I will cover all of his back turn moves, guys, so don't you worry, but the focus is down back 2. So down back 2 on hit, right, will take you into a forced mix-up state against your opponent. Down back 2 on block is a rock, paper, scissors, depending on the reads that you make. If you make a right read, it's in your favor. You make a wrong read, it's in your opponent's favor. But down back 2 on block can still be cancelled to stay safe. You don't have to commit to the mix-up situation. So the difference between down forward 1 and down back 2 is the fact that down back 2 takes you into back turn. And overall, down back 2 has more range than his generic down forward 1 and is faster than his down forward 1. His down forward 1, however, is more advantageous on block at -2, and this doesn't take you into back turn, so it's just basically a check, right? A check to stay into neutral or continue your pressure. But for down back 2, you are trying to go for those back turn mix-ups. So that's the difference between down back 2 and down forward 1. So furthermore, down back 2 does have another layer of mix-ups to it. It has down back to 1, which is a 2-hit string, with the second part of the string being a high. So down back to 1, the 1 being a high, which can be ducked. So now your opponent sometimes will just duck after you do down back 2, giving you free mix-ups when you go into back turn on block, right? So it's another layer of mix-ups. So it's either duck, or is it gonna do the full string? Is it gonna just stop in back turn and go low? Is it gonna go into back turn and go mid? Is it gonna go back turn and grab? Like, it's crazy. You can't just stay guessing with down back 2 all the time against Raven. At some point, your opponent will start challenging, right? So down back to 1 sometimes is good to throw out if they're mashing after down back 2. Now down back to 1 also has an extension with a clone, right? So down back to 1-1, he throws out a clone, which is a mid attack, which is -14 on block. So all his clones are like -14 on block, so it can be launched against opponents, of course, with 14-frame launchers. So if the one part of the down back to 1 hits on counter hit, the one of the clone part, right, the 2-1-1, the second part of the 2-1-1 string, the clone part is guaranteed on counter hit. So yeah, the layer of mix-ups he has from down back 2 is crazy. It's crazy. You can do so much, and at this point I can't really tell you everything, guys. You have to get creative and experiment with the character. Like, there's so much you can do from down back 2 on its own. A very, very strong tool. Okay, so now before we go into Raven's next tool, I want to talk about Raven's crouch dash, which is a very very important aspect of the character. This is something you have to learn and master if you are looking to pick up Raven or just improve on your Raven overall. So basically, let's start with his quarter circle forward motion. So just like Paul, Feng, Dragunov, Brian, Raven does have a quarter circle forward motion that has certain moves to it. His quarter circle forward 2 is a low, quarter circle forward 3 is your normal combo ender, quarter circle forward 4 is a launcher, quarter circle forward 1, 2 is his screw or his tailspin or tornado, or how you look at it. So now when you cancel the quarter circle forward by just doing down to down forward, Raven goes into crouch. So you do the dash input of the quarter circle forward motion, but he'll just end in crouch. So down to down forward, right? Down, slide to down forward. If you slide all the way up to forward, you will do his quarter circle forward motion. What happens is Raven goes into crouch, then you have access to all his crouch moves, right? All standing 1, crouching low, all those moves. That's the whole idea behind Raven's crouch dash cancel. So if you hold it, you can stay in crouch and go for like full crouch mix-ups. So you can go like down, down forward, and hold down forward to stay in full crouch. You have access to his full crouch moves such as full crouch low sweep, his full crouch down forward 3, and stuff like that. If you don't hold down forward, you will have access to his while standing moves. So while standing 1, which is launcher, while standing 2, while standing 4, etc, etc. So that's basically how you use Raven's full crouch or his crouch dash cancel or his crouch dash mix-ups. We know how Mishima's wave dash, well, Raven has a crouch dash. Now you don't really have to learn how to do this, like spam it all the time, but you must learn how to at least do the second part. So at least do it twice. So down to down forward, then slide back to down, then down forward again. You will do this like double crouch dash. You can cancel with up, then repeat the motion again to have like a complete full screen crouch dash, but you don't really have to learn that. Just like doing it twice is enough. Now this is important, like I said, because Raven has a very scary full crouch mix-up game with his while standing 1 or his while standing 3-2 with his tornado sweep, his full crouch down for 3+4. Now I'll talk about this later in the video as it is a separate section of the video, but why it's most important is because of the next 2 we're going to look at in the next section, which is his while standing 2. So this brings us to Raven's while standing 2, which is a safe mid counter hit launcher, and I broke down why it's so important to learn how to crouch dash with Raven, and this move is one of those reasons as to why you want to crouch dash with this character. It's a safe mid elbow that launches on counter hit and goes under highs, right? Only -8 on block. So what more could you ask for? Like the only issue with this move is the fact that it comes from while standing, and this is why you have to master his crouch dash, because when you learn how to crouch dash, you just master his crouch dash, you use this move as though it comes out from standing, right? It doesn't even look as though Raven is in crouch when he just does this move. Now Raven is not a very spam heavy character. You can't spam a lot of stuff with him, but this move is the closest thing when it comes to a spammable move, right? Like Jin forward 4, for example, or forward 2, Lars forward 1+2. This has to be the closest thing for Raven when it comes to spam, right? And mostly because it goes under highs. But against characters or against players that know about this move at high level, you can't really just throw it out there. But oh my god, is this move freaking strong. So against matchups such as Kazuya and Steve, for example, this will completely go under highs. Now you won't really successfully crash every time, right? For example, against an electric, you won't go under an electric every damn time, but it's a very good move to use to challenge the electric. And remember, crouch dash is a crouching status, so all the highs will completely go over the crouch dash. Raven completely goes under all the highs, so it's very good to use as an approaching tool against characters with very strong high moves, right? Kazuya electrics, Reina electrics, you know, Mishima electrics, Steve jab, stuff like that. So that's what makes instant while standing 2 very strong. So you can just throw it out basically in, for example, like a bait. Let's say down forward 1, you throw out a down forward 1 and you see that, okay, this guy is throwing out a lot of jabs after my down forward 1. So that leaves you the leeway, or gives you the freedom to go for instant while standing 2 and crash those jabs. If they commit to the jabs, most of the times you actually will get the counter hit. They become worried, or they become like hesitant to do their high moves. Start throwing out like mid checks here and there just to stop you from going into crouch or spamming this move. So really that's what makes this move really strong. The fact that it goes under highs and you access it from full crouch, it means it gives you good movement against characters with very strong high moves like electrics and steel jabs, like I said earlier. And the fact that it goes under highs means you can use it in a sense of bait your opponent to throw out highs, right? Like a down forward 1, then into an inside standing 2 against characters like Horang, for example. Horang loves 4-3, right? So bait them to do the 4, go right under the 4, and before they throw out the 3, boom, counter it or standing 2. That's basically how you use this move. Being a counter hit, of course, you would want some frame traps or setups for this move. Now, Raven isn't really a very strong character when it comes to plus frames or having very good frames in general, so you don't really have that many setups for outstanding 2. The only thing I can think of is Soulzone 4, which is his Soulzone law that we'll talk about later. At max range, when you get like +3 and above, right, +3, +4 and above, you can go Soulzone 4 into instant outstanding 2 to get that frame trap. If they do press any buttons, you will get it on counter hit. Down 4 on counter hit into instant outstanding 2 is a frame trap as well. You have down back 3 into outstanding 2, elbow is a frame trap as well. But overall, Raven doesn't really have many of these, right? He doesn't really have many frame traps for this move. You just mostly use it like a poke, right? Dash up in their face, boom, instead of standing 2. You mix that up with his full crouch lows and you have a full mix-up game going on as well. So yeah, I can't stress how important this move is for Raven. This is like his BNB when it comes to poke, right? You might even make an argument that this is his strongest move in his arsenal or his best poke. You have to use this move. This one is not an exception, guys. Like, I'm sorry, Raven players, if you don't like using this move, please, you have to, right? You have to watch high-level Ravens and you see just how much they spam this move. It's because it's just that good. Next, let's take a look at Raven's forward 3-2, which is another of his very strong mid pokes. This move is amazing. The closest thing that comes to mind in terms of comparisons is Jin's back to 1. You kind of use it in the same sense, but they are different. So this move is natural on hit. So forward 2-3, if the first hit lands, the last hit lands as well. It is only -9 on block, so it's safe, but you can't really continue your pressure. You basically have to block because you lose your turn. The second hit can be delayed as well, although when you delayed, the string is not natural on hit, only the first hit will land. So yeah, this move is good. Like, it's so good as an Okizeme option, as a poke for spikes in combos, and just covering every option, right? Every option from the ground against the character in terms of Oki. Like, dude, this move is insanely strong. So first, let's talk about how it works as an Okizeme option. So basically what I mean by this is when you knock down an opponent, what you want to do to follow up, right? If they stay on the ground, the second hits grounded, by the way. So if they stay on the ground, the second hit will clip them. If they try to get up and press buttons, they will lose to this because it covers everything, right? To cover the tracking left, tracking right, they can do a low poke or a get up mid. Just dash up forward 2-3 after a combo, after a knockdown, and this thing will cover all their options. It is really good. Like, I'm telling you guys, this is really good. So what this means is when the opponent realizes that they can't really press buttons from the ground because of this move, they'll start getting up and just block, right? Getting up and blocking, right? So meaning you can dash up and go low and continue your pressure, right? Because they're scared of this forward 2-3. That's what makes it so good as an Okizeme option, right? Like, it's so good, bro. I love this move. The second thing that makes this string so good is the fact that you can delay the second hit. So basically you can do like forward 2, then delay the 3. So what this means is, right, you can do like forward 2, then if your opponent expects you to do the delayed version, they won't press buttons because they're expecting the last hit of the move, the 3 part of the moves. So what this means, you can use it to kind of like get in for like fake pressure. So like forward 2, then go for like a low, right? Forward 2 low, forward 2 jabs, forward 2 down back 2, forward 2 down forward 1. Basically just follow up after forward 2 instead of going for the delayed string because the opponent is expecting you to do the full string of forward 2-3. So a good setup, for example, is forward 2 into 1-2-4, right? Remember the 1-2-4 counter hit confirmable string we talked about earlier? This is a very good setup for that, right? You can go low, for example, forward 2 down 4, forward 2 down 3, just stuff like that. Although forward 2 on its own is unsafe at -12, so it can be punished if the opponent gets used to like your mix-ups, right? So yeah, just be wary of that. And lastly, it's very good for like off-axis combos. So for example, let's say back turn forward 4-3+4 is a law that launches on normal hit and puts the opponent like back turn. You get like a back turn combo, right? So if you spike, you can go into Soulzone after forward 3-2, for example. You can do like forward 3-2 into 3+4. It takes you into Soulzone stance. If you go Soulzone 4, it does hit grounded opponents. So you can do this in your combos, right? Spike forward 3-2 Soulzone 4 for guaranteed unscaled damage from the slide. So that's basically how forward 3-2 works. That's how forward 3-2 should be used. It's good as a poke, a good check. It's used to get in for fake pressure because you can delay the last hit, and it's also good as an Oki Zeme option. And lastly, as a spike combo ender as well for off-axis combos. Like, this move just covers everything. It does it all. It's an amazing move, and you also have to use this move. Like, bro, I didn't even mention that this move is your long range punisher as well. Comes out at 15 frames for moves such as Paul Phoenix Deathfist, right? So on top of all I've said about it, it's also a very strong punisher. So it's +6 on hit, meaning you can do some pretty good follow-ups, right? Remember, it's a poke, so on block you just advise to block because it's -9, so just back away. But on hit, it's +6, and you can do a lot with +6. So you can do like forward 2-3 and forward 2-3 again. You can actually do it twice because it comes out at 15 frames, right? So forward 2-3 again. If they press buttons, they get hit. You can do forward 2-3 into down back 1, forward 2-3 into down forward 1, forward 2-3, go low, right? So stuff like that. It just gives you a good leeway to continue your pressure on hit. On block, just back away and block. So a very strong move, like I said. It covers so many options. Multi-purpose move, a must-use tool for sure. Moving on to Raven's 3-3-4, which is a very decent mid-string. Now, this is a move that you can afford to not utilize in your game plan, but remember, Raven is a very heavy mix-up character, so you want to use as many mix-up tools as possible, and 3-3-4 is particularly good for this reason. So firstly, 3-3 on its own is safe at -8, so when you land it on the block, you basically just want to like back away, but you might not want to do that all the time, and now explain why. So the fourth string is 3-3-4, and the last hit is a high that launches on counter hit. So now you have a mix up between 3-3 on its own and 3-3-4. So the opponent has to guess whether you're going to finish the string or you're going to just do 3-3 on its own. And the best part about this is you can cancel the 4 into back turn, right? So 3-3-4, then hold back to cancel it into back turn. So you see why this string has some potential to it. So think of it like Feng Wei's 3-3-4. Not every Feng player uses that string, but that string is strong. So it's kind of the case with Raven's 3-3-4. Because of the fact that the 4, the last hit launches on counter hit, it's worth actually throwing out once in a while. So the 3-3 jails, right? So you just throw it out. If it's on block, you're good, no pressure. If it lands, you can continue your pressure, of course, because like I said, it gives you plus frames on hit. But you can cancel it into back turn if you want and continue your back turn pressure if you make the right read, because sometimes the opponent will mash after 3-3 if they notice you're cancelling into back turn a lot. People tend to do a lot of dick jabs after this, so you can do like 3-3 cancel into back turn 4, which goes under dick jabs and lows like we spoke about earlier. If they jab after your 3-3 back turn cancel, you can go for like a dick jab, or you can go low for the back turn full sweep, or like the back turn down 4. Basically just like down back 2 into back turn, right? You put yourself in the same situation with the opponent. It's all about read. Sometimes it's about guessing, right? Are you gonna do 3-3-4, the full string? Are they going to mash? Well, if they mash, they will get counter hit, right? If they duck, they get getting launched, they're getting punished. But if you don't want to put yourself in a situation of where you want to implement your back turn mix-ups, like I said, you can just do 3-3 on its own. It's a very decent mid check. People do complain that Raven doesn't have the best mids, but what he has is very decent mid checks. So let's say you go into hit, right? After a hit engager, most Raven players like going for running 3-4, right? But running 3-4 at high level is easily stepped. So instead you just go for a good mid check, and 3-3 is that particular mid check. We spoke about forward 2-3 earlier. It gives you +6. So 3-3 is a good follow-up after that as well. You can do down forward 1 into 3-3. Like, it's just a very good mid poke, guys. Basically, that's how you want to use this move. If you want, you can go for the back turn mix-ups. You can do the full string if you want. If you see the opponent is mashing buttons a lot after 3-3, you can back turn cancel and go for back turn mix-ups afterwards, or just do 3-3 on its own. Okay, next we have Raven's back 4-4 mix-up. So just like 3-3-4, you don't really have to use this. It's not a must use, but you see why it has potential and why you want to throw this out once in a while. Okay, so back 4-4 on its own leaves you at -7 in back turn. Now, it's not as safe as down back 2, but you are in quite a safe and unsafe state, and I'll explain why. So unlike down back 2, with down back 2, you can just cancel right out of back turn and still be safe. But that does not apply with back 4-4. You can actually get punished for doing back 4-4 with jabs, right? So back 4-4, if you cancel your back turn with back 3+4, you will get punished by jabs. However, just like down back 2, right? If you cancel your back turn with down back, you will go under highs and punish them instead with our standing move, just as we explained with down back 2. However, if they do a down forward one, like a mid check instead of jabs, this will counter that, right? It will counter that. But if you do back 4-4 and manually cancel out of back turn with back 3+4, like you would a down back 2 to stay safe, this will beat their down forward one. So you will stay safe if they use down forward one. If they do jabs, you will lose, right? So it's kind of like a mix-up situation going on here, and this is what makes back 4-4 a little bit more risky than a down back 2. Now, the reason why this move is good is it has this delayed version of the string. So like back 4-4-4, right? You basically just mash back 4 or mash 4 whilst holding back. It does this cool ass ninja kick follow-up, so it's like a delayed version, and this one becomes +1 and leaves you in back turn, right? So this is pretty strong, and the best part about this, it has a variation or a low mix-up, right? So if you cancel the 4 into 3, he does a low version. Then you can also do 3, then 3+4, and he does the follow-up, which is a guaranteed natural 2 hit string, right? Low, mid, guaranteed or natural hit. So you have a mix-up if they don't try to press buttons, because they can actually interrupt you when you do this slow version. But it's a mix-up between the fast version and the delayed version, right? So you have more mind games going on here. Like I said, Raven is a mix-up heavy character, right? Almost everything this guy does is just mix-ups. It's a situation where are they mashing buttons after back 4-4, right? And do the slow version, they just cancel and stay safe. If they're not mashing buttons, they're respecting you, do the delayed version, you're +1 in back turn, right? Which is very strong. So if you do back 4 and 4-4-4, like the delayed version in your +1, you do have some pretty good frame traps, right? Your back turn, you have 1. Remember, you have 1, which is an 8-frame jab, right? So this will beat any option they do press. Actually, it puts them in crouching state, right? So most people do outstanding 4. So this will beat outstanding 4. You can do back turn 2-2-1, which is a counter hit confirmable 10-frame string that I'll talk about later in the video as well. So that's another frame trap you can use after the back 4-4-4. If you start going low, you can like dick jab if you want, or you can do back turn 4, which goes under lows, remember. So you have a whole bunch of mind games with this string, and this is why it is so good despite being niche, but it's such a good mid. High level players use this often, like Pina loves back 4-4, and for good reason. So you use it as a mix-up. Whether you do the fast version if they're not pressing buttons, or if they're pressing buttons, do the fast version. If they're respecting you, start going for the low version. Throw out the low version as a mix-up as well. And if you do happen to land back 4-4 on hit, this leaves you at +8 in back turn, and as we all know, +8 is ridiculous. +8 is a lot. You can do so much. He has so many frame traps or setups for this. You can do like back 4-4 on hit into forward 3 as a frame tap, lands on counter hit. He has a guaranteed follow-up I'll talk about later. Back 4-4 into forward 2, back 4-4 into forward 4-1, even the low is a frame trap as well. Back 4-4 into 2-2-1, the 10-frame counter hit confirmable string. Now back 4-4 on hit into 1-4. Like, he got so many frame traps after back 4-4. It's ridiculous, and like it's +8 guys, so you can do so much after this. This is what makes back 4 a pretty strong move, pretty versatile move as well. And not forgetting, it's a 14-frame punisher, guys. It's 14 frames fast, right? So if you want to punish certain characters that do -14 moves and go into back turn, then this is the punish that you want to use. So basically, this is how you must implement your back 4-4 in Raven's kit. So throughout this video, I've spoken about back turn, and like I said, it's a stance and it's a stance, you're going to be using like what, 80% of the time. So it being a stance, it does have its own strong moves. So let's take a look at some of the individual moves that make back turn really strong. So first, let's start with his back turn 1, which I've touched upon in the video. I did say it's an 8-frame jab. It's basically a jab that comes out of back turn. Doesn't really have the properties of a regular jab. It's only -1 on block, so pretty good. You can still move afterwards. You can still continue pressure. The fourth string is back turn 1-4, which is natural on hit, right? The whole thing hits if it's on normal hit, so it's very strong at the wall because it was flat as well. So back turn 1 is a good way to just like cancel out of back turn and go back to face forward against your opponent and continue pressuring your opponent. It's also good for interrupting pressure, right? Let's say down back 2, and just randomly throw out a back turn 1, right? If they do down forward 1, they get hit, stuff like that. I won't really dive deep into back turn 1. It's basically just a jab you use out of back turn. At the wall, it's very strong because it was flat as well. So it's very good to risk it at the wall. The fourth string is high, by the way, sorry, and the second hit can be ducked. So if you do like back turn 1-4, the second hit can be ducked, so be very careful. And that's why sometimes it's good to just do back turn 1 on its own. But at the wall, it's worth the risk, especially if you are back turn against your opponent, because if they do press patterns or they're late on challenging something, they will get wall splat, right? The reward is worth all that risk, right? And again, it's all about reads, guys. It's all about interrupting your opponent. We spoke about back 4-4-4 earlier. So back 4-4-4 leaves you in back turn at +1. You can throw out the back turn 1, down back 2, of course, into back turn 1, interrupts their down forward 1. If you throw out a mid, can interrupt them. So it's just pretty good in that sense, right? Going to back turn, throw out a 1 jab to just interrupt stuff or continue your pressure and stuff like that. So next, let's take a look at Raven's back turn 2-2 string. Now I won't spend that much time on this string because this string basically works the same as his 1-2-4. It's a 10-frame counter hit confirmable string. Now the fourth string is 2-2-1, right, with a clone at the end. So the clone is -14. It can get punished. However, you can visually see, right, just like 1-2-4, you can visually see if the move hits on counter hit, then you complete the entire string. The only difference between this and 1-2-4 is this one is easier to counter hit confirm, firstly, and secondly, you do this from back turn and it has a little bit more frame traps than 1-2-4. You can just use the 2 on its own as a poke. It's just basically a back turn jab that leaves you in back turn, unlike back turn 1. So if you want to use your jab but stay in back turn, then back turn 2 is that move for you. If you want to go for the full string, this means you're going for a counter hit confirm, right? You visually see that the move lands on counter hit, then you do the whole string on counter hit. Everything is guaranteed. Just like 1-2-4, you can also cancel the 2 hits into Soulzone. So 2-2, then 3+4, you can cancel that into Soulzone. So you have a mix-up situation with either the Raven player doing the entire string or cancelling into Soulzone. So basically everything I said about counter hit 1-4 and 1-2 cancel into Soulzone applies to this string as well. So please, if you use the timestamps, go back to that section and use what I said in that section to apply to this section as well. What I'll talk about is mostly the frame traps, because Raven can go into back turn in so many advantageous positions. You have some pretty good setups of this. So just basic stuff is full crouch down forward 3, for example. His low leaves you at +2, and like I said, the back turn 2-2 comes out at 10 frames. So full crouch down forward 3 into back turn 2-2 is a frame trap. They press buttons, they get counter hit. How it's spoken about back 4-4-4, I mentioned this earlier. So back 4-4-4 is +1. They press anything or outstanding move, they get counter hit by this. Of course, you have to confirm it like I said. You have running 3. Running 3 is +4, right? So running 3 into back turn 2-2 is a counter hit frame trap as well. And basically every move that puts you into back turn on hit followed up by back turn 2-2 is a frame trap. This is one of my favorite moves with Raven. Honestly, I really love this move. It's very versatile, it's very strong, and it's so easy to hit confirm this move as well. And the last part about this move is the fact that it does some pretty good chip damage when you are in heat. And in heat, like I said, all his clones just become safe, right? So you have no reason not to just throw this out. You just throw this out for the sake of chip damage. If they press buttons, they get hit by the last clone. Mix that up by cancelling into Soulzone by going 3+4. I have a Soulzone section, guys, so I'll talk about Soulzone, don't worry about that. So that's how you must use Raven's backturn 2-2 string. A counter hit confirmable string that's 10 frames, as fast as a jab. So once more, guys, use what I said about counter hit 1-4 and 1-2 cancel into Soulzone the same way, like apply that logic the same way with backturn 2-1. Next we have Raven's backturn forward 3, which is his main counter hit fishing tool from backturn. Now I say main counter hit fishing tool because whilst backturn 2-1 is a counter hit fishing tool, technically it does start with a high. The first initial hit is a high and can be beaten by like dig jabs and stuff like that. This is a safe mid that gives you guaranteed stuff on counter hit. So safe mid comes out at 13 frames, is only -5 on block, so you can technically still move afterwards. So it gives you 14 frames guaranteed on counter hit. So for max damage, you get a guaranteed down forward 1-4. You can get stuff like, 2-4 for 10 frames. You can get stuff like 4-1 and go into back turn at +7. You can get stuff like back 4-4 on counter 8 and go back turn at +8. You can do 1+2 if you want, and guarantee takes you into hit, so you can do a lot from this. Now this move is pretty good. Like I said, it's a back turn counter 8 fisher. Whilst it's not a counter 8 launcher, that sucks, I know, but it's still decent for some good frame traps. You don't really have that many honestly from this, but it's still a very good tool to use. So basically stuff like running 3, for example, running 3 being +4, back turn forward 3 comes out at 13 frames, so running 3 into back turn forward 3 is a counter 8 frame trap or a good counter 8 setup. They press buttons after running 3, they get hit. You have back turn forward 4, which is Raven's low from backturn. I'll talk about it as well, don't you worry. So backturn forward 4 leaves you at +4, which is highly convenient because backturn forward 3 is 13 frames. So again, a very strong frame trap or a very strong setup. They press buttons, they get hit. So that's basically or technically how you want to use this move, just as a counter hit fishing tool. Backturn back 3 is a homing move as well, a high homing move that leaves you at +4. So another good setup or another good frame trap. Most of his frame traps from this as well come from going into backturn on hit, right? So let's say down back 2, for example, right? Just basic frame trap, down back 2 on hit into forward 3, stuff like that. 4-1 on hit into forward 3, back 4-4 into forward 3 on hit. So all those frame traps basically work, but I'm just giving you guys a general idea on how you want to use this move. If you notice your opponent pressing buttons a lot when you go into backturn on hit or after certain moves that are plus on block that give you guaranteed forward 3 on counter hit, if they press buttons, then it's a good time to use it to your advantage. So it's a very decent move, one of Raven's best moves as well from backturn as well. Raven's backturn 4 is a safe mid that takes you into hit. So think of this move like a Jin forward 2 before the nerfs. It feels that good, except it goes over lows, right? It's a very strong move in backturn and it's very spammable, right? It's very spammable, has huge pushback. It's just basically like a Jin's old forward 2, except it's only from backturn. So this is the move you are going to be using to go under the dick jabs and the lows when you go into backturn, the grabs as well. This will stop opponents from dick jabbing you a lot because this move hurts and it just feels good to do. Now I won't really spend that much time on this move because it's self-explanatory. There is not much revolving around this move. You just throw it out if you have a good read on your opponent, if they keep spamming dig jabs or keep spamming lows when you go into backturn. However, what I love about this move is the pushback. The pushback is very strong. Because of the pushback, you can like spam it like I said earlier, just do backturn 4 again. It leaves you at that range that's like so far from your opponent, but it still can hit again if you do it again, right? And because of the space that it has, you can also throw out like a jab, so like an 8-frame jab, just to stop them from dashing in. So think of a Dragunov, for example. You do a back turn 4, there's a high chance a drag player will come with a running 2, right? So doing back turn 4 then throwing out a 1 jab is pretty good to interrupt that pressure, even at the wall, right? It still has that pushback at the wall, so it's kind of good to do like back turn 4 then go for like a back turn 2-4, right? Just to get them, to interrupt them and get that wall splat. And lastly, Raven's back turn 4 is without a doubt his hardest hitting mid from back turn, and as such you are going to use this mid as a mix up to his back turn forward 4-1, which is his best low from back turn. I'll talk about this low in the next section. So you want to use the back turn 4 as a mix up to this forward 4-1. So a very versatile tool to use, but mostly just to go into hit and to go over those dig jabs. Speaking of Raven's back turn forward 4-1, this is going to be the base of your back turn mix-ups. This is going to be the reason why opponents are going to duck against you when you are in back turn. This is a high-low string, so basically if they duck you, you are going to get launch. It's launch punishable. However, you can just buffer the 4 on its own, and it's only like -12 if I'm not mistaken. This low is insanely strong. You can also cancel it into Soulzone by pressing 3+4 after forward 4-1, and that's +8 on hit. So +8 on hit into Soulzone, that means they are guessing their lives between the high, between the mid and the low, right? So yeah, it is very strong, guys. It is very strong, and this is why opponents duck against Raven when he is in back turn. So forward 4-1 on its own is +5 if you don't go into Soulzone, so still pretty strong. So like I said, you can just buffer the forward 4 on its own. This was a recent buff that Raven received, and it's +4. And we spoke about back turn 2 earlier, we spoke about back turn 1, we spoke about back turn forward 3. These are all frame traps you can use after back turn forward 4. And what I mean by frame traps is setups, right? So like, let's say back turn forward 4 into back turn forward 3. If they press buttons, they get counter hit. Back turn forward 4 into back turn 2, they press buttons, they get counter hit. So he does have some pretty good setups after back turn forward 4. Being the main tool that you use for mix-ups, and I said earlier, back turn 4 is the mid that you're going to be using as the mix-up for his back turn forward 4. So it's between the back turn 4 and the back turn forward 4. You can also use other mids such as back turn back to 4, which is natural on hit, and stuff like back turn forward 3, which are pretty niche options, but back turn 4 hits pretty hard, and like I said, it takes you into hit. This is a very strong low, and I advise you to mix between doing the full string, so back turn forward 4-1, and just doing forward 4 on its own, because committing all the time does get you killed if blocked. Like I said, it's launch punishable, but just buffering forward 4 can mess up their timing, and you can actually just cancel from this. If they try to launch you, then just punish them afterwards. So yeah, or his second strongest low in my opinion. A very, very strong low in back turn, guys. Fully utilize this low. Next, let's talk about Raven's back turn forward 2-3 string. And at first, the string might seem very basic and niche, but honestly, this string is really strong and very underrated in my opinion. So it's a forward 2-3 string, leaves you at -7 on block, so pretty decent. It's not natural on hit, so the first hit lands, they can still block the second hit. However, when this move lands on counter hit, first of all, it gives you +14, so you can get some guaranteed follow-up like down forward 1-4. So basically what we said about counter hit back turn forward 3 applies to counter hit back turn forward 2-3. It gives you all those options, right? 1+2, 2-4 if you want, 4-1 if you want. Everything I said about counter hit forward 3, back turn forward 3 applies to this as well. But not just that, on normal hit, right? The last hit, so forward 2-3, the 3 part on normal hit still gives you +14, right? So that's the difference between this one and counter hit back turn forward 3. So just want to land that last hit on normal hit, and you still get the follow-ups. You can also delay the last hit, which opens up a can of mix-ups with this string. So you're getting vibes from his forward 3-2. So his forward 2-3, we explained about how you can delay the last hit, right? So this applies to forward 2-3 as well, and you want to use it in the same sense. Sometimes you want to complete the whole thing, sometimes you just want to do the back turn forward 2 2, then use that to continue your pressure, right? Go low and stuff like that. Or if you want, you can just do the forward 3-2 and just stay safe, right? So for the forward 2-3 and just stay safe. And the best part about this is he does have another string from back turn forward 2. So he has back turn forward 2-4-2, which is his screw from back turn, his screw string from back turn. The second part is a high, right? Forward 2-4. So a mix up between the high and forward 2-3, which is mid, right? And then the opponent has to guess whether they stay duck in, whether you're going to do the high or you're going to do the mid. And most of the times they won't duck this because they know how strong this move is, which means in hit you can get the free chip damage, because remember, in hit all of Raven's clones become safe, so you get free chip if they don't duck. So yeah, this move is very strong. I think the only downside to this move is the startup. It's pretty slow because it comes out at 17 frames, so you can use like a back turn forward 3 instead, or like a back turn 2-2 because they come out faster. This one is pretty slow, but it is hard hitting and it has mix-up potential to it. It's also very strong as an OK2 at the wall. You can do some pretty fancy stuff with this string, but very niche like I said. But overall, that's the idea behind using the string and what makes it very strong. We have another low in his back turn stance, which is back turn forward 3+4. Now this low at first glance looks really bad. It's very slow and it's reactable and it's launch punishable on block. So like, why the hell would you even bother using this low? Okay, so first things first, this low is a natural combo on hit. Even at tip range, it will still launch the opponent. So if it's close, you will go at the opponent's back, but you still get the combo. If you are far from your opponent's face, but like do the string or do the move and stay face forward against your opponent, you will still get the combo. Now the reason why this low is good, apart from all those things I've said, is the fact that he does have a different timing from his back turn forward 4-1, and this is the secret behind using this low. Back turn forward 4-1 is the low that every player looks for against Raven when he is in back turn, right? That's a secret behind maximizing the usage of his back turn forward 3+4. As low as it is, the opponent can't react to back turn forward 4-1, right? So they just duck it instinctively as a read. So if they mess up the timing and let's say they duck forward 4-1 and you don't do forward 4-1, you do forward 3+4 instead, it will be too late that they realize, okay, this guy actually went for the slide. So that's the idea behind his forward 3+, his back turn forward 3+4. It's very difficult to react to. Like honestly, Raven does have a bunch of slow moves, and I'll get into that with his lows, right? His general lows. He does have a bunch of slow moves, but because of the way he moves and because of the way his back turn works, it's difficult to actually just react to these things all the time. Back turn forward 3+4 is strong in that sense. That's how you want to use it. And lastly, for his back turn moves, let's talk about back turn back 3, which is his homing move from his back turn. Now, there's one issue that all these moves from back turn have, and that's tracking. All these moves are weak to sidestep left, more specifically sidestep left duck. But I will say this, I am God of Destruction with Raven. He is my main, and through my journey I didn't find myself getting stepped and getting destroyed that much in back turn, right? Mostly because you can rely on your opponent, you can delay the back turn mix-ups. Most of the times you're plus that they can't even sidestep, but at high level this does happen and you need to be prepared. So that brings us to back turn back 3, which is a very strong homing move he has in back turn. So the move is +4 on block, which is a lot, right? Sets up a lot of frame traps spoken about in the previous section of the video. On normal hit, it knocks down for a guaranteed 3+4 follow-up. The only issue with back turn back 3 is the fact that it's a high, right? So like I said, sidestep left duck is very effective against Raven when he is in back turn. So you really want to mess up your timing sometimes, right? Try to just like throw moves late, don't always throw them immediately, right? Mess up their timing, just try to bait them into sidestepping and ducking, but don't throw out anything. Sometimes you can even just cancel out of back turn, right? And this stops them from sidestepping all the time. But overall, back 3 is very strong for tracking, right? For tracking and just for combos as well. but just want to use it as a homing move, especially if you notice that the opponent is sidestepping a lot, because honestly, like I said, it's a high, right? So you don't really want to just throw it out randomly. Just use it for some good frame traps and tracking as well. Okay, so now let's get into some of Raven's natural low, starting with his down 4. So down 4 is a pretty decent low, comes out at 21 frames, so it's unreactable, does 18 damage, which is a lot, has some very good range, but is only -2 on block. So it doesn't give you plus frames, but what it doesn't have in plus frames, it has it in range and damage as well. And the other good thing about this move is the space it leaves between you and the opponent, so it can put you in some pretty good mix-up situations. Okay, so now when you use this low, you are at -2, quite right, you are at negative, but you have some mix-ups to this as usual, with Raven being a mix-up heavy character. So first of all, down 4 into outstanding 4 is like basic 101. This will trade with down forward 1s, right? Down forward 1s come out at 13 frames. So if you do down 4 into outstanding 4, it will trade with down forward 1s. However, it will lose to jabs. Jabs come out too quick for this, so this will lose to jabs. However, if you do down 4 into outstanding 2, this completely crushes jabs. We spoke about outstanding 2 earlier, so this works in this situation as well. So down 4 into outstanding 2 will crush jabs, but it will lose to down forward 1s because down forward 1s come out faster. That's the mix-up you have between the opponent throwing a mid and the opponent throwing highs. The other thing is down 4 leaves you in crouch status, and you do have some very strong full crouch lows. You have full crouch down forward 3 and full crouch down forward 3+4, which we'll talk about later in the video as well. So if you notice the opponent is jabbing a lot after you do down 4, you can do down 4 into more full crouch lows just to mix them up. That will cause them to start doing mids, and when they start doing mids, you can now do down 4 into outstanding 4 or down 4 into sidestep or just backdash and get that with punish. That's what makes down back 4 a very good go-to low, despite it not being a plus on hit low move. And like I said, it leaves a good decent amount of space between you and the opponent, so you can just like move around afterwards and see what they do, bait out a whiff punish, bait out a sidestep, right? You can do down 4 into sidestep and see what they do. Are they pressing buttons? Are they respecting you? It's that kind of low. So basically just a low check, right? Nothing for momentum, a low check, and the reads depend on you and what the opponent is doing after you do land this down 4 low. Okay, so next we have his full crouch down forward 3, which is in my opinion Raven's best low without a doubt. Comes out at 20 frames and does 17 damage, leaves you back turn at +2, a low with plus frames. Who would have thought, right? Raven gets a decent low at last. So this move is amazing, and one of the reasons again as to why you want to learn how to crouch dash, because if you can crouch dash, you have access to this low every single time, right? It doesn't even show that Raven is in crouch when you do this low sometimes, because it comes out that instance if you know how to crouch dash. And this low is risky depending on how you use it. So there's a mix-up behind this low on block. So it leaves you in back turn. If you just cancel with back 3+4, it is -14. Anything -14, you will get punished. Against characters that are 14 frame launchers like Raven himself, he can launch this low if you cancel with back 3+4 out of back turn. However, he has a parry which is back 2+4. I'll talk about parries after the lows. So if you parry the punish after his full crouch down for 3 is blocked, you can get the parry out of the punish. So the opponent here has to stop and actually have to bait you into doing this parry and punishing you after, right? So it's kind of like a mix-up you have from this low. It's either you do the low on block and parry afterwards if you predict that the opponent is going to try to punish you like normally, or you just cancel out of back turn, and if the opponent doesn't fall for the bait, they lose the punish, right? So they're waiting for you to do the parry, but you cancel and you're safe. So it's kind of a mix-up to this low, so it's risky depending on how you look at it. It's either you guess wrong or you guess right? It's based on your reads as well. And on counter it gives a follow-up, back 10 3+4 guaranteed for some decent damage. So it's a very strong low, 39 damage on counter it, a very strong low with some very strong mix-ups to it. And the range, man, the range, you can basically do this from full screen because of the crouch dash that you have. Like, this buff single-handedly changed Raven on the tier list, in my opinion. It was so difficult to implement it before, but now you can do it so fast, so versatile, all the time you have access to it, and it makes him just a very, very strong character. So it's +2 on hit, like I said, so you do have some pretty decent frame traps after this. We spoke about his back turn 2-2-1 counter hit confirmable 10 frame string from back turn. It's a very strong setup for that. If they press buttons, they get counter hit. Of course, his back turn 1-4 as well is a pretty good setup. You don't really have much because you can't really do much with +2. Very, very strong law. Quarter circle forward 2 is another of Raven's good laws. It comes out at 25 frames, leaves you at +5 on hit, and is only -12 on block. So I know 25 frames is very slow. Very slow, very reactable, but I'll explain why it's so good despite the speed. On counter hit, it guarantees you 14 frames, so just like back turn forward 3 on counter hit, you can get anything 14 frames and below. So 1+2 follow up, down forward 1-4 follow up, back 4-4 follow up, etc, etc. So now the reason why this law is good despite the speed is because it comes out from crouch dash, and Raven is always crouch dashing. Like, Raven is always, he's always crouch dashing, so it's hard to determine if he's going to go for this slow. The initial startup of this law just looks like a crouch dash, right? So you won't really react to it like, okay, he's doing the law. You will just notice it when he does the last hit. So because of the crouch dash animation, that 25 frame startup is actually not as slow as it seems to be. This law is very good, right? +5, guys, +5 counter hit guaranteed, and only -12 on block, right? At high level, yes, it does get blocked once in a while, and most Raven players don't really use it, but honestly at -12, it's not really that risky for you to just ignore for what it gives us on counter hit especially. So it's up to you if you want to use it, but in my opinion, I think you should, because like I said, like -12 is nothing. It's nothing. Maybe unless characters like Dragonov, whose punish has hurt, or 12 frame punish has hurt, but overall, you should be using this law as a mix up to like a full crouch stuff, right? Full crouch while standing 2, full crouch while standing 4, full crouch down forward 3, just throw in a quarter circle forward 2. The opponent might think you're just crouch dashing in their face, but actually you are going for the quarter circle forward 2 low. And at +5, you have some decent follow-ups. Of course, you have down back 2, which is a general nice frame trap, a nice setup. You can go for like 1+2 afterwards. You can go for back 4-4 after quarter circle forward 2. You can go for 3-3. You can do so much at +5, like I've always, like I've said throughout this video. And this is why I think quarter circle forward 2 does have a place in Raven's kit that you should be implementing. But it's up to you, like I said, if you want to use it or not. Full crouch down forward 3+4 is the main reason as to why opponents duck against Raven when he's crouch dashing in their face. This move is so strong. It is so strong. Does 34 damage, however, it is launch punishable on block. And this is like the base of your full crouch mix-up. So think of Shaheen slide or low slide. This is the Raven mix-up that he has. That's comparable to that, the full crouch sweep. So it's a mix-up between the low and the mids that he has. So he has while standing 1, which of course is a natural mid launcher. He also has while standing 3-2, which is an instant screw launcher, and actually becomes safe in hit as well. And that's where Raven begins to shine. So this law leaves you in Soulzone. You are forced to go into Soulzone stance after doing this law. So it gives you some pretty good Oki out of this. Now the thing is, when you do full crouch down forward 3+4 into Soulzone, the opponent can beat every single option if they decide to take row forward. So this actually, in my opinion, needs to be fixed. I think it's kind of like a bug or not intended, but hopefully Namco do see this eventually because it's annoying. So you're forced to go into Soulzone, meaning you can only do moves that come out of Soulzone after this sweep. So to counter that, Raven from Soulzone has a bunch of teleports, right? You can do back to go into back turn after Soulzone. You can hold down to go into full crouch after Soulzone, and up to stay forward after Soulzone. So what the Raven player usually does is hold down and go back to full crouch stance. So when the opponent take rows forward, they will find themselves in the same situation of being mixed again. So find themselves in a 50-50 situation if they take row forward. So it's kind of just like a counter play to the opponent being able to beat every option from Soulzone after full crouch down forward 3+4. So like I said, use this as a mix up from full crouch. And again, you want to learn how to full crouch with Raven or crouch dash. You can just dash in their face and do the law, as simple as that. That's basically how you use this law. Crouch dash in their face and force the mix up. That's the 101 on how you use Raven's full crouch down for 3+4. However, there are some situations you can like put yourself in to mix up your opponent as well. So things like moves that force you into full crouch, whether on hit or when block or on block, or laws that put you into full crouch. So for example, let's talk about Dragunov's down 2. So when Dragunov does down 2, he leaves you both in crouch. And Dragunov's down 2 is -1 on hit. So most Dragunovs tend to just back away or like sidestep, because at -1 they are at a disadvantage, because if you do outstanding 4, you will trade with the outstanding 4 as well. In a situation like that, you can throw out Raven's sweep as a mix-up, so just something to mix up your opponent or give them something else to think about when you throw out a down 2. Even on block, right, you get a down 2 blocked, instead of going for outstanding 4 punish, you go for the sweep instead, just to mess them up. Moves that put you into full crouch, moves like Brian forward 4 will put you into full crouch, right? So as you stay in full crouch, they put themselves in a full crouch mix-up because you have access to the full crouch sweep. So now you don't really have to use this law all the time. It's up to you if you want to be risky. Like, you can completely play Raven without using this law, but this law is just too strong to ignore. Despite being launch punishable, the reward is really worth it. Honestly, it just feels so strong. The Okizeme is pretty stupid, especially if the front row is fixed. That means you get a guaranteed mix-up after the full crouch sweep. So yeah, these are basically how Raven's laws work, or the most important laws. There's a bunch of other laws, but they aren't really that like essential to use. For example, down back 3, for example, is reactable, down back 4 is reactable, down 3 is just a general poke. These are the most important laws, in my opinion, that you should implement in your Raven game plan, and full crouch 3+4 is one of those tools. Very, very strong mix-up tool. Okay, so now let's get into Raven's back 2+4 parry, which has to be one of the best parries in the game. Free. This parry is insanely strong for a couple of reasons I'm going to explain about. Okay, so firstly, this is one of the few parries in the game, if not the only parry in the game that parries mids, highs, lows, grabs, elbows, and knees. Even weapons. This parry just parries everything. When Raven does this parry, you can't really touch him or punish him, only if you bait him to do the parry. And this is why it stands out as one of the best, if not the best parry in the game. This parry comes out at 1 frame of activation, guys. 1 frame activation window. That is ridiculous. It is oof. If there's one thing that I can say might be broken about Raven, it's this parry, but like, let's not go there. I won't even mention that, but like, yeah, this parry is pretty stupid. It's good for defensive play and turning defense into offense. Just to give you guys an example of why this is so good. So first, let's talk about the speed. So when you go into hit, you are at +17. So at +17, you can't really do much. You have to respect your opponent. Here, I'll go into hit and do Raven's forward 1+2, which comes out at 18 frames. So I have 1 frame where I can actually do something. And in this game, there is nothing that's 1 frame fast. Nothing that's 1 frame fast except Raven's parry. So as you can see here, I can actually pull off a parry when this Raven does forward 1+2 after going into hit. Yeah, it is pretty strong. Like, Raven is one of the only characters they gave that they can actually put a character in a mix-up when they take you into hit. So now the opponent has to guess or like try and bait out the parry, right? They go into hit, and if you keep missing the parry after they hit engage, they're like, okay, this guy keeps on spamming parry when I go into hit, so let me just try and wait and bait that parry, right? So you put like a no mix-up game in this whole hit engager nonsense, and like, it's pretty annoying, right? So like, you can be offensive, right? In a case where most characters have to be defensive, like after a hit engager, everyone is blocking. But if you're a Raven, you can actually challenge with the parry. So yeah, it makes it pretty strong. And the best part about it as well is that you can also use this parry in back turn. And as I have explained in most of the video or throughout the video, there are situations where you are stuck in back turn in a negative sense, right? Like, you're negative, you can't really press buttons. In most cases, the parry will save you. Like, we spoke about back 4-4 earlier. So back 4-4, if they hit you with a down forward 1, they will clip you most of the times if you cancel with a crouch dash or cancel with down back. But if you do back 4-4 and you parry afterwards, you can land the parry. The parry also puts you in full crouch, right? So sometimes you can land the parry and be right next to your opponent and be in full crouch, making you go for the full crouch sweep, go for the outstanding 1 if you can get a read and get a punish out of it, or outstanding 2 throughout the mayhem and get a counter hit launcher. So yeah, it is a very strong parry, guys, and as a Raven main you have to use it defensively and turning defense into offense. Lastly, let's finally talk about Raven's Soulzone stance, which is another mix-up stance that he has. So you're going to be using this stance primarily for 2 specific moves, his Soulzone 2 and his Soulzone 4. So let's start with his Soulzone 2 first. His Soulzone 2 is a safe mid hit engager that's only -9 on block. Rather, -9 on block isn't really good because you are safe but you can't really press buttons. So after this you're just blocking, right? So yeah, not really too much behind this move. It's just basically a safe hit engager, -9. But the thing that stands out about Soulzone 2 is the range. The range is sick. The range is really good. Like, this thing goes really far. It's so strong, right? So you want to use this mix-up when you use moves that take you into Soulzone at an advantage. You're speaking about back turn forward for 1, takes you into Soulzone at plus, forward 2-3 on plus, on hit takes you into Soulzone, you have back to 2 on hit. So you want to force this mix-up on hit mostly, because that's when you will force the mix-up against your opponent. However, you can use it after a knockdown. It's pretty good for that as well. You can do like after a combo, after you spike with forward or 3, you can go for a Soulzone mix-up, or just generally after any knockdown, you can just go for like dash up manual Soulzone into the mix-up. So that's the idea behind using this stance, or the moves in the mix-up between these stance. Now let's talk about Soulzone 4, which is the low. This low is pretty good as well. So it is a counter hit launcher on hit, right? It leaves the opponent in a crouching state as well on normal hit, and is +2 at normal range. At close range rather. At close range, it is also launch punishable on block. That's the biggest negative about this slow. However, it's less risky depending on the distance that you're at. So basically, the further you are from the opponent, the less risky this move is, and the further you are from the opponent, the more plus the move is. Like, this move can go from being -15 on block to being like -10, -11. Sometimes it's even safe, right? Depending on the distance at which you do the slow. So spacing when using Soulzone 4 is very important. It's very important, especially for Oki, and like I said, after a knockdown. So this will primarily be the mix-up you have in Soulzone between the 4, which is the low, and the 2, which is a mid. And depending on how far you are, let's say you do it at, let's say, mid to maximum range, right? It can be like +5, +6. With those numbers, you can create some pretty good frame traps. It leaves the opponent in a crouching state, just remember, right? So you can go for like Soulzone 4 into outstanding 2, which is a good setup, or a counter hit setup as well. Go Soulzone 4 into outstanding 4, it leaves you in full crouch as well, so you can go for like a mix-up situation with his full crouch low. We spoke about his full crouch down 40 +4. So yeah, just get creative with the Soulzone. But mostly with this stance, these are the 2 main moves we are going to focus on. Soulzone 2 for the mix-up, in Soulzone 4 as well for the low mix-up, the mid mix-up and the low mix-up. He does have other niche moves like Soulzone 3-2, for example. Soulzone 3-2 is his screw from Soulzone. It is unsafe at -14, it's a clone move, but it is safe at -3 when he is in hit. And in hit, like I said, you do get some really good chip damage from this move. So using Soulzone 3-2 in hit isn't really a bad idea. It's also a mix-up because remember, he does have a low from Soulzone, and people duck a lot when you go into Soulzone. So Soulzone 3-2 when you are in hit is pretty strong. You can just go like Soulzone 3 if you want, and Soulzone 3 leaves you back turn at -4 on block. So -4 is just the same as down back 2 on block. So everything I said about down back 2 on block applies to Soulzone 3 in back turn. Everything applies, so you can go back to the down back 2 section, and whenever you go into Soulzone 3 leaving you back turn, you can use the same logic or the same principles I talked about in the down back 2 section. He also has Soulzone 1, which can take you into crouch or crouch dash if you hold forward, but this one is, you know, just for some poking pressure, some fake pressure if you want. You can't really do too much with this, but it's up to you to like mess around with it. You are better off just going for a full mix-up when you are in Soulzone, especially for that chunky mid Soulzone to hit, which takes you into hit. So that's basically how Raven's Soulzone works. So guys, this is where I'll end the guide. Now, there are a lot of things I haven't talked about. I have a separate guide for his hit, so if you want to learn about Raven's hit, please check out that guide. This video is already long. This is the longest guide I've done so far. As you guys know, I don't really like my guides being too long, but here we are because it's Raven and he's my main and I love my man, so yeah, he deserves all the love. So check out my hit guide if you want to check out the hit stuff. And like I said, I haven't really covered many moves. I haven't covered Kotaseko forward 4, which is a good keep out 2, back turn power crush, which can save you when you're in back turn, down forward 3, because like you can afford to leave out these moves out of Raven's arsenal and still do good. Like Raven is a type of character that really depends on the person playing him. You won't really find Raven players using him in the same sense, right? So that's something I love about this character. It's very expressive. It's up to you to play Raven the way you want to. So anyway guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. If you enjoyed it and watched it this far, please leave a like, subscribe, and check out my other Raven content as well, including this one, 15 essential tips that you must know if you want to improve your Raven gameplay. So GG my boys, and take care.